Thank you, Dr. Alvarez, for the introduction. And good morning, everyone. We're very excited to have you here at our workshop titled Do I Belong Here? Imposter Syndrome and its Impact on Diversity in the Medical Workforce. Once again, my name is Hernandez. I'm a first-year resident of the Emergency Medicine program at Stanford University.
And I'm Nancy Rivera. I'm a first-year pediatric resident at Lucille Packard at Stanford.
Okay. So in our workshop, we're going to define imposter syndrome. We're also going to discuss the impact on medical trainees and the medical workforce, as well as develop tools which are going to help us address imposter syndrome. Okay. And like we said, this is going to be a very interactive session. We want everyone to participate. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a quiz that is you can find on the second page of your orange handout. It's just it's a small set of questions. It's about 8 short questions that talk about some of the features that we can relate to imposter syndrome. So go ahead and take a couple minutes to do that. Well, it seems like everyone is mostly done with the questions. Any thoughts about the questions? How about your results? Was anyone surprised with the results? Was anyone expecting to get the amount of questions that they got? I know that it says in there that if you have selected yes to at least 5 of the questions, then that is a sign of imposter syndrome. But even if you did not get 5 questions, almost everyone in the room can at least associate with 1 or 2 of those concepts in there, which exemplifies and tells us how common imposter syndrome is in everyone, especially in the medical training. Up next, we want to play a short video that talks about how imposter syndrome came to be defined. Let's see if we can actually get to play it.
Even after writing 11 books and winning several prestigious awards, Maya Angelou couldn't escape the nagging doubt that she hadn't really earned her accomplishments. Albert Einstein experienced something similar. He described himself as an involuntary swindler whose work didn't deserve as much attention as it had received. Accomplishments at the level of Angelou's or Einstein's are rare, but their feeling of fraudulence is extremely common. Why can't so many of us shake feelings that we haven't earned our accomplishments, or that our ideas and skills aren't worthy of others' attention? Psychologist Pauline Rose Clance was the first to study this unwarranted sense of insecurity. In her work as a therapist, she noticed many of her undergraduate patients shared a concern. Though they had high grades, they didn't believe they deserved their spots at the university. Some even believed their acceptance had been an admissions error. While Clance knew these fears were unfounded, she could also remember feeling the exact same way in graduate school. She and her patients experienced something that goes by a number of names: imposter phenomenon, imposter experience, and imposter syndrome. Together with colleague Suzanne Imes, Clance first studied imposterism in female college students and faculty. Their work established pervasive feelings of fraudulence in this group. Since that first study, the same thing has been established across gender, race, age, and a huge range of occupations, though it may be more prevalent and disproportionately affect the experiences of underrepresented or disadvantaged groups. To call it a syndrome is to downplay how universal it is. It's not a disease or an abnormality, and it isn't necessarily tied to depression, anxiety, or self-esteem. Where do these feelings of fraudulence come from? People who are highly skilled or accomplished tend to think others are just as skilled. This can spiral into feelings that they don't deserve accolades and opportunities over other people. And as Angelou and Einstein experienced, there's often no threshold of accomplishment that puts these feelings to rest. Feelings...
Okay, so we're going to stop the video there. So that was a good explanation of what imposter syndrome is. And just to summarize it, like they said in the video, imposter syndrome is a concept that was first described in 1978 by Dr. Clance. And it is defined as an internal experience of intellectual phoniness. In other words, it is that feeling that you're a fraud. It's not so much a feeling that you're afraid of being a failure. It's more of a fear that someone important in your life is going to come and discover that the whole time you've been an imposter, and they're going to take away the things that you've earned. It is a feeling that all of your accomplishments are due to some sort of luck, or that you don't deserve what you have, and that you do not deserve to be in the position where you are. I also want to say that this is something very common, and that a lot of us have experienced, even if you're not aware of it, like I have. It is a thing that discredits everything that you've done and accomplished. That's what I think about when I think of imposter syndrome. And I was personally drawn to this topic because it is something that I've dealt throughout my training. And I'd like to share a story about how that I hope it exemplifies how I've experienced imposter syndrome a few years ago. And for that, I'll give you a little bit of background of myself. So I moved to the United States when I was 14 with my family from Mexico. I started high school without knowing any English, and it was very, very hard. I also went to a high school that was very low resource, that was predominantly Latino, low income, where a lot of students, or I should say only a few of the students, made it to a four-year university. I was one of the few ones from there that made it to college, and I was the first one in my family to ever be close to go to a four-year university. Now, when I went into college, you would think that I was leaving my dream because it was such a big accomplishment. But instead, I have never in my life felt so out of place. Because not a lot of people like me were at UC San Diego, where I attended undergrad. I felt like I had gotten in by some sort of luck, or that the admissions process had made some sort of mistake. And I think that a lot of people feel like that. And I was just not aware of that. And then on top of this, I hadn't satisfied the college level English requirement through like tests in high school. And so then I was placed in this like basic English classes, and I had to pass this test before I could even take the real college level writing classes. I went through my whole first quarter of undergrad thinking that someone was going to come and take my spot away. Even though I had my ID that said my name and the university name, even though I lived in the dorms, I went through the whole first quarter feeling like that. At the end of the first quarter, not only did I pass my writing requirement on my first attempt, but I did very well academically in the rest of my classes. And this might sound pretty silly, but the first thing I did after I passed my English requirement, I went to the bookstore and I bought myself my first sweater with the university name on it. That was the first time I felt like I belonged. And my feeling of imposter syndrome had been so bad that I had not bought that sweater because I was afraid of getting kicked out of the university and too embarrassed to return home with this sweater that had no value on it. And so it exemplifies, that this was the first time that I belonged in the university. 4 years later, I graduated on the top 5% of my university. The whole time I was qualified, but I didn't know it. The whole time, that was my spot. I had earned it through all the hard work of myself and my family and my mentors, and I wasn't aware of it. Similarly, the day that I got into medical school, and more recently, last year, during the match, and this is a picture on the slide of me and Nancy when we couples match at Stanford, I still could not escape that little voice on my shoulder telling me or asking me, am I good enough? Or did they make a mistake? So the reason why I'm telling you this story is because I want to normalize this feeling, and I want you to know that it is very common. And it might be, your experience might be very subtle, it might be very different, but it's something that we've all experienced. We'd like to open this space to learn from each other about our experiences in imposter syndrome, and I hope that our next activity does that.